housing market is at the crossroads. Never before in its 50-year history of real estate investments has the housing market witnessed such a steep cut. A report from Axis Capital shows that the bleed in 2016-17 was so deep that it makes the Lehman crisis of 2009 look kosher. Welcome to Urban Reality. I'm Manisha Natarajan. As we conclude financial year 2018 and head into the next one, there are important questions weighing on everyone's mind. Sales of housing units have dropped as much as 40% in 2017 vis-a-vis 5 years ago. Our first question, how long will it take for the effects of note ban, GST and RERA to normalize? That leads us to our second question. Is it really the triple whammy of note ban, RERA and GST which is the culprit and has unraveled the industry, or was it simply the overambition of industry players who launched too much believing that the party will never stop? And finally, it's not just real estate which is hit with slow sales of housing units. It's the entire Indian economy and the investment cycle which feels that big pinch. Will the next financial year be the turning point for investment, sales and prices, or is it still too soon to take that call? Joining me are Naveen Raheja, Chairman and MD, Raheja Developers. Also with me, Ritesh Vora, Partner, Real Estate Investments, IDFC. Anuj Puri, Chairman, Anurag Property Consultants. And Sudhir Pai, CEO of Magic Bricks. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining me. I think the very first question, always to Anuj Puri, whose report we have, of course, used extensively through the debate. Anuj, January saw launch sale of 500 units across top 7 cities. And new launch sales have doubled from December 2017. But my question to you is, at what cost are developers being able to sell even this much of inventory?
So, Manisha, I think your opening statement summarized our discussion beautifully. I enjoyed every word of what you said. And I think I would say is two things that I would reiterate. One, 2017-18 has been perhaps the most challenging year that I have seen in the recent past. Maybe even more challenging post the Lehman crisis that we had. So, to that extent, I'm saying is that it has been as challenging as far as the sales is concerned. And the second very interesting point that you mentioned is that perhaps the industry stakeholders did not think that the party would ever stop. As a result of which, they went on and on and on to be able to go ahead and say that we will continue to launch. Whatever we decide to launch will get sold and the buyer will buy. I think that thesis has really been challenged by the buyer. Clearly, we're seeing due to that the sales has come down. For a longish period of time, the launches had come down as well, Manisha. But ultimately, the developers have these land parcels. They have bought these land parcels either through equity or through NBFC funding. They need to launch it. And that's where we are starting to see that the launches have started, although not to the same extent what it was in 2016 or 2015, but clearly it has picked up. The launches has picked up because by force they are being asked by the private equity investors or NBFC guys to say, you got this land parcel, you have to now launch it.
Absolutely. All right. So that's an interesting take that industry cannot stall. They have to launch because they are under pressure. They can't sit on land parcels. There's a capital cost to land parcels. Ritesh Vora, come in here. What we are hearing is that, yes, launch sales have picked up, but a developer in Mumbai is selling affordable homes. And these are homes which are under 50 lakh rupees, which we believe is a sweet spot of Indian real estate market, asking for only 2% at booking and the rest on completion. That is desperation, isn't it? I mean, really, should we not just shift to buy only ready-to-move-in homes because that's the only thing which is selling?
No, so yeah, absolutely, Manisha, you're right. And like Anuj said, these are desperate times. Certainly, probably more desperate than whatever we've seen, maybe in the last 10, 15, 20 years. And desperate times call for desperate measures. Real estate developers are under pressure from the lenders, from investors, from their own teams to sell, and they have, ultimately people realize that, profits will come, at the end of 3 years, 5 years or 6 years, but liquidity is what keeps the engine running. So which is why you see all of these schemes, at 2% and 1% as well, where people are saying that even if the customer is paying 2% down payment, he's also spending another 5-6% on stamp duty, and he's effectively getting locked in by taking a home loan as well, because most of these schemes do come with subvention. So there is a stickiness for the customer. At the same time, the developer is giving the assurance to the customer that, listen, my neck is also on the line, because I'm probably servicing the interest on your loan till the time I deliver. So it's a win-win situation in some ways for the customer who's today hesitant to make a decision, as well as for the developer who, irrespective of whatever comes, needs to make a sale. So I agree it's desperate measures, but you have to do what it takes to survive.
Okay, so desperate measures you have to take, do whatever it takes to survive. Sudeep, I will get all the outside experts before the industry incumbent who will tell us what's really going on. What is your sense? I mean, Axis Capital report says on one hand that, look, there is a 5-year cycle. In a 10-year period, this 5 years are down and 5 years are up. And they've done this beautiful charting where they show now there is an upward move which is just waiting to happen. I'm not being able to see that upward move just yet. I mean, if I look at the inventory figure, if I look at the launch sales, if I look at the squeeze that one hears about all around you, where developers have to sell 6-7 units just to service loans, what is your own sense? I mean, Magic Bricks is the largest platform. What numbers can you share with us?
So I'll share a slightly different perspective as well. So often no doubt the industry is paying the price for excess capacity that was created during the last few years. And some of these desperate sales that you see are, I think, in response to not being able to service the lower demand.
These are guys with no lineage. I mean, they don't have debt to service. I mean, do not want to name the developers, but these are fresh guys, fresh on the block for affordable housing, and they're not being able to sell, which is the worrying fact.
True. But look at it this way. When you compare back versus 5 years, you're comparing versus a market that had end users and speculators. And clearly what's happened in the last few years is because of prices not moving and a variety of other reasons, the speculators have exited the market. What I'd argue is the volume of sales that you're seeing in today's market, which is about 200k units in the primary market.
200,000 units in the primary market?
In the primary market in a year. In a year. And maybe about 350, 400k in the resale market. That, I would argue, is now the new normal. This is probably what the real market size is. This is what end users are really buying. And no doubt there is capacity which is far in excess to that. People have to compete to sell, which was a little different market from 5 years ago. But if you work with this perspective that this is the market size, this is the end users out there, I think people will adjust to that.
Has the industry readjusted to this norm, sir? That the market size is only 550,000 or 600,000 between resale and primary, and for the industry, actually, it's primary sales which are critical. Resale really doesn't come into the picture for developers.
Very right. Let me tell you, market is determined by the supply available at the right price.
Okay.
And if there's
if that is the case, Mr. Raheja, why would in Mumbai, whether it's Navi Mumbai, let's say, a product which is under 50 lakh, the builder has to actually use a 2% down payment subvention scheme to sell his flats? It should go.
You have to look at the inside of it. Builder, in any case, is getting his money through the financial institutions.
Okay.
So, if he is taking 2% and plus maybe some statutory charges which are applicable for RERA registration of agreement and all these things, after that the developer is not compromising. His money is going to come.
Okay. So you don't even think this is desperate measures at all?
It is just a design which he has done.
It's just a marketing tool.
Marketing.
Okay. So are you saying there is no distress? One of the most respected voices like Khushru Jijna has said on record that 90% of the developers are going to be wiped out in this downturn.
I don't want to comment on any experts or any analysts, whatever they draw out of this.
Okay.
I only know Indian market everyone needs a house. And some stage in life actually needs a house.
All right.
You know.
But by the time the buyer comes, you're saying you all will survive.
No, give a good product at a good price. Buyers are there.
Okay. All right. Anush Puri, let me come back to you. India Resurgent Fund and a joint venture between Bain Capital Credit and Piramal Enterprises is set to launch a 1 billion fund for investing in distressed assets in the country. Earlier this year, IFC said that it is planning to co-invest to acquire distressed and special situation assets in 4 countries. India is one of them. And this is probably a partnership that they will form with Clearwater Capital Partners. I mean, these are very, very strong headlines which say that, look, we are sitting still on a tinderbox. The worst is not behind us.
And I agree with that, Manisha, clearly. I think is 2 points that I would want to pick up. One is what Sudhir said and one what you discussed on the consolidation, and then I'll respond to your question. Whilst I appreciate Sudhir's new norm of 200,000 for primary homes, I think the demand is going to prop up, and I feel is where it will settle will be between 450 to 500,000. Okay. I think 200,000 is very low. For Indian market to survive, Manisha, I think it will be a challenge at 200,000 if it was the new norm for primary sales. I'm not including secondary sales.
Anuj, generally I allow you to complete your sentence because it's so clear. But here is my devil's advocate. Interest rate cycles have turned around. Job creation is not happening. How are we going to reach that 400,000 to 450,000 number? And
if it doesn't happen, Manisha, you will see a surge in the price happening. Because the demand for the last 17 years has been hovering around that. It is in the last 4 years it has come down to about 150, 200,000 homes. So, at some stage this is getting built up as a pent-up demand. If we say it will continue at 200,000, I can assure you that the prices will start to climb up. And the moment the prices will climb up, there will be new inventory that will get launched because the developers will bring out their inventory. So the price comes down and the demand continues in there. So that's where I'm saying that 200 may not be the new norm. I think 200 is really at a desperate position. That what the situation is. And if Sudhir is right, what he's saying is, then I think the industry is going to go through a huge amount of challenge.
In fact, Sudhir is defending the industry and saying, look, even in the worst case scenario, we've had 200,000. But let me toss to Ritesh. Ritesh, would you be that confident? Because, look at the government's push to housing, affordable housing, the number of schemes it's thrown open for private sector participation, which has still been very lukewarm. Here's a whole Axis Capital report which shows how important the housing sector is for India's investment rate to get pulled up, and it's been depressed because of that. But give me some confidence that the sector will see better days in the next financial year, which is what I'm hoping for. I've been asking this question for the last 3 years, and I still haven't seen the light at the end of the tunnel.
So, Manisha, I think my take on this is that the Indian real estate sector, especially the residential sector, is going through a complete structural realignment. 2016-17, 2017-18, these are just milestones in a continuum. And we are basically heading towards an industry which will be very different from what the industry was maybe 5-7 years ago. And if I can just elaborate on this, what I really mean to say is that, between 2004 to 2013, which was really the last bull run, most developers, or practically all developers, have focused on the top 15-20% of the housing market. Everybody was focused on upper mid-income, premium, luxury. What's happening now is that people have realized there is only a finite demand at that particular in that particular segment. Investors have been driven away by markets as well as by the government, and now they need to look at the next market segment, which is probably the next from 20 to let's say 50 or 60% of the market, which is the mid segment and the lower mid segment, and in terms of price points, probably between 25 lakhs to 50 lakhs or 60 lakhs in the sort of metros that we are talking about. Okay. So I think gradually you are seeing the build-up of supply and launches in this particular segment, and you will see volumes coming back in this particular segment, which potentially could be larger I don't really have a sense for the numbers, whether it will be 2 lakh or 5 lakh. But, just by sheer numbers, these volumes should be greater than the volumes that we have done in the previous cycle during the boom time, simply because of the size of the market.
Size of the market. Okay.
And this
let me come back to you. We'll take a quick break. I mean, there's something that the point that you've made, Ritesh, definitely there is some buzz on Dalal Street as well. With that point, this whole affordable housing story, look at 2017. It was the worst year for sales, but 85% of companies from the real estate sector delivered really good results for the investors. What's really happening? This is a sector which has always been a high beta sector. And as we move into FY19, if we don't get the affordable housing stock moving, launches and sales, what happens to that as well? We'll come back and get answer to it.